Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Oj, for being here. And I guess my question to follow up on those that have been asked about your rules, and my concern is specifically the impact on the biofuels industry in the country, and specifically in my district, which is the #1 employer, that being agriculture. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the EPA's Renewable Fuel Standard 2 methodology assumes that for every acre of soybean crop that is used for, or vegetable oil, we'll say, a crop that's used to produce a biofuel, an equal acre of ground is used then in the Brazilian Amazon or rainforest, is basically put into production to replace that acreage. Is that correct?
I would need to check on that. What obviously we know is that it takes about 64 acres for a gallon of soy biodiesel, and it takes about it's actually the opposite. It takes about 64 acres for corn ethanol, and over 400 acres for a gallon of biodiesel. So it's a factor of 5. So clearly you have much more land. It takes much more land, 5 times more to produce a gallon of biodiesel than it takes to produce a gallon of corn ethanol. I will have to get back to you in writing our assumptions of the amount of land that it will take in Brazil for soybean oil production versus United States. I don't remember that data.
But from reading your information, it led me to believe the assumption is that for every 100 acres that's taken, quote, out of production, or 100 acres in the United States that's used for biofuels, 100 acres of Brazilian ground is put into production for soybean.
I don't remember. The only thing that, again, I remember is that we're assuming that today, and in 2022, you're going to have higher yields from soybean in the United States. I don't remember what we have done for Brazil. But again, I'll be glad to get you back that information.
Yeah. Well, my concern is that, with the new rulemaking, it's going to put these biofuel industries out of business, because my understanding is, based on the current rulemaking, that the vegetable oil or soybean biofuels will not meet your 50% greenhouse emission standards that's required. Is that correct?
Well, it is correct if you just look at soy-based biodiesel, but what we have laid out in the proposal as an option is to allow the plants, the biodiesel plants, to be able to average the use of waste grease and soybean. And the majority of the plants do that today. I believe about 70% of the plants have the ability, and they do blend soybean, for a few months, and then waste grease. So what we have proposed is an option that if you average the two, then you lower the threshold from 50 to 40, about 1 billion gallons of biodiesel could be introduced in the marketplace to meet the standard.
Okay. I guess, what struck me was that, based on what I read, the assumption was almost an equal swap. And in looking at the statistics in Brazil versus the United States, the assumption would be that, basically as soybean or biofuels production in the United States increased, and that crop was diverted, so to speak, to produce a biofuel, that there would be a commensurate surge of the production of that crop in Brazil. And that is the assumption of what I read. And I guess my concern is that's a fallacy, because the reality is, during the same period where biofuels increased in the United States, the production of those same crops in countries like Brazil actually decreased.
I have with me Sarah Dunham, who just gave me a note. She's in charge of our climate office. And she's telling me that in the model, we're not assuming 1-to-1 ratio. So again, I'll be more than glad to get back to you on that. And again, that's the purpose of the public comment process. If we have made assumptions that scientifically are not supported, we want to get the input, and we want to change those assumptions.
Yeah.
But according to the note that I received, that's not the case. But again, we will respond back to you in writing.
Well, all I would say is that regardless of whether it was a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1, the fact of the matter is that the reaction has actually been negative, not positive, in terms of the effective production of soybeans in Brazil at the same time when that crop in the United States has been diverted towards biofuel production. So I guess I would suggest it might be a false assumption.
Well, let me make it clear. We're looking at 2022. We're not looking today. So when we are doing the life cycle analysis for biodiesel from soy, we're looking at 2022, how much biofuel will be required in 2022. And based on the FASM and FAPRI models, what will happen in the United States in 2022 for exporting soybean. And based on that, then we assume yield improvements and other factors, production improvements. And that's where the data is coming from. So I don't think it's comparable. You can compare what is going on today with what we're looking about, which is the 2022 production level. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, what the analysis has done.
Sure. And I appreciate predictions. I just think that it's much easier to have a serious debate about what's happened over the past 4 years, from 2004 to 2008, and talk specifically with facts on production as opposed to extrapolating what may or may not happen over the next 10 years. I have one quick follow-up question, if the chairman would be so kind to let me ask, and that is, did you look at all about, since we're looking at cutting down on greenhouse emissions and trying to save specifically forests and acreage in Brazil, at the impact of our tariff on Brazilian imported ethanol and specifically sugarcane as a because there's a debate here obviously on whether or not that should remain and the impact that's having on reducing the amount of acreage put into production there. Because I had the opportunity to travel there with Majority Leader Hoyer last month and met with members of their legislature who represent the Brazilian forests, and their point is simply that for them to not put it into production is really to allow that land to do very little to generate revenue. And so if we remove those tariffs on the Brazilian sugarcane ethanol, I might suggest that there would be a great increase in the number of acres there put into production and what impact that has.
We have not looked into removing the tariffs because what we are doing in this analysis, we assume the current U.S. policies. But let me assure you that we have had extensive dialogue with Brazil. I was in Brazil last year. I haven't been in a farm, but I did go to Brazil last year, and I spent a whole week with both the government officials, but also with the industry. They have given us extensive input, and it's the only country that we have received extensive input on our models, and we are in the process to include their data. We believe the data has a lot of basis to be included. So hopefully by the end of June, we're going to be able to lay out the input that they have given us. We also have committed that we will have a separate kind of expert meeting in Brazil with the scientists in Brazil. And I think it's very important because Brazil and what is going on there has a very big impact because of the indirect land use to this regulatory program.
Okay, thank you.
I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Griffith.